guess one of the highlight cases for me being down here in the South Texas region was successfully prosecuting a what they call alien smuggling organization here in South Texas. Both those individuals were sentenced to the max penalty of 20 years. And in totality, in a span of a couple actually months and over a year, these individuals trafficked over 2,200 peoples from the South Texas region all the way to the Boston region in a small amount of time. And of course, with that amount of people that they were illegally smuggling into the United States, there was a lot of cash that was involved as well. So these individuals were also charged with money laundering.
Currently covering the deadliest human smuggling attempt in U.S. history is what it's been called. And during opening, it was suggested by the defense that with these conspiracy cases, they're usually abbreviated about a week long, and that, the fact that the government is planning on taking 4 weeks to try their case, that it illustrates that there's just nothing there. Um, Given your experience, what do you make of the potential length of the trial relative to that burden of proof?
Yeah, absolutely. So, 1324 conspiracy cases, this one, which actually it's a 1324 conspiracy, which led to death. These cases are very much complex, right? If you take just a 1324 conspiracy case, right, alone, stand alone, excluding the death, those are complex cases to prosecute, and they're difficult to actually try, right? And why is that? Because conspiracy, you have to prove that there are two people in concert, right, that are essentially planning to break the law together, right? So in this case, you have 53, um, illegal immigrants who came to the U.S. and they unfortunately died, right? So there is going to be several degrees of separation here, where you have load drivers, you have foot guides, you have stash house coordinators, right? Then you're going to have your coordinators on the US side. So you have so many degrees of separation and so many people that are involved. So in order to capture this conspiracy, it is going to take some time. There is going to be, analysis of witnesses. There's going to be analysis of, the technological data that's going to be, which are going to be, your phone tolls, right? There's probably text messages. There's geolocation data that's also going to be analyzed. So to put that all together, it's is in essence you're writing a book from chapter one to the end. So you have to sufficiently tell that story. And given the heinous, nature of this trial, right? This crime that happened, it is going to take some time. So 4 weeks is definitely not overly long. And if it was a little short, I would be concerned. But I think here the government is doing a great job, kind of painting that picture very thoroughly, showing all the factors and the players who are involved, to include the data that they are also showing in the trial.
I want to talk about some of the challenges associated with trying a case like this. I know you had just mentioned earlier, just the complexities of these cases. A lot of what they're focusing on is, WhatsApp messages, testimony of co-defendants. What are some of the challenges in relying on data like that?
Yeah, so of course, you're going to have to actually prove up that data, right? You're going to have to show that it is reliable data, that these devices were actually in the hands of those people who are testifying, right? I know that there are some co-defendants that have already taken the stand and have positively identified some of the defendants who are there. So some of the challenges that the defense may pose to the government is putting that device in that whoever's taking the stand, putting it in their hand, right? So that is going to be some of the challenges, and the other side of the challenge is explaining to the jury in layman's terms what that data actually is, right? Because when you're talking about WhatsApp, it's how the government obtained the data, what device is it coming from, right? And whether it be an IMEI or IMSI, coming to that very specific data, and then the prosecution is more than likely also using the location data as well to show exactly where those text messages came from. So in doing that, it just comes with so much data, and you have to break it down for the jury. So that alone does take a long time.
And during this trial, it became evident that this particular smuggling enterprise had nearly twice as many successful smuggling operations than those that were busted. They talked about a lot of the technology used, whether it be drones to detect people, also paying people off at these points of at these checkpoints. Do you think that um, the days of these smuggling operations are done given this new administration, or do you think that the federal government still has a ways to go before we can catch up with the technology?
So I will say, under this current administration, right, President Trump's border initiatives are a lot stronger than President Biden. So I will say that under this administration, President Trump's administration, we have seen already down here in the South Texas region, which being Laredo, McAllen, Brownsville, these smuggling attempts have decreased quite significantly, right? I think a lot of these smuggling organizations know that under President Trump, there are serious penalties to be had, right? Anybody who is in the past may have just been with, under a Title 42 removal or a voluntary removal. That's no longer happening. Now people are getting prosecuted who illegally cross with either a 1325 misdemeanor or a 1326. So these organizations knowing that, I think are being extremely cautious, right? And therefore, that's why we now see the numbers down. Are we going to continue to see smuggling events? Yes, we will, right? But I don't think we're going to be seeing them at the numbers that we did, 2.5, 3 years ago.
And during the trial, some of these victims have received asylum, and then co-defendants that have pleaded might receive sentence reductions. But one of the co-defendants testified last week that the only thing that he was promised was protection for his family. Do you believe that there are ties to cartel organizations in these smuggling operations, or is that something that's kind of you just see on TV?
No, so the government is going to do everything and anything in their ability to protect those witnesses, right? And I have full faith that the government will definitely do that. But there is, there always is an underlining threat to these individuals who do decide to testify against other criminal defendants, right? These organizations oftentimes are powerful and they are much larger than what people think, and they're much more sophisticated than what people think. So, either witness intimidation, right? Witness tampering, or it going even to the fact where a witness is actually, for whatever reason, seriously bodily injured. That is not only a thing that we see in the movies, it is a real threat that witnesses continue to face. But again, the government does a good job, and these federal agencies do a good job to ensure their safety.
And what are some of the risks associated with taking a plea and testifying against co-defendants? I mean, these are the only two individuals that are
Mhm.
taking their case to trial. Um, and that's something that's come up quite a bit, just protection and then also potential cartel involvement. But do you think that there are legitimate risks associated with um, going against potentially a cartel or backed organization?
Yeah, again, I think these risks are very much real, right? Oftentimes, you will see some of these individuals who take these pleas and they will come back to you and say, while I was in a waiting cell or while I was in general population or in the yard, some people have approached me and asked me not to do that. That is a form already of, witness tampering, right? And they'll go to the extent where, you will have other individuals tell them, hey, well, I know where your family's at. You're going to get it, those type of intimidation techniques. So they're very much a real threat. Again, I feel that the government here in the recent past has done a great job of securing and making sure that these witnesses are definitely safe throughout the trial.
And just generally what you've seen so far from this case, um, these individuals are looking at life in prison. Um, what do you think the likelihood is that they could receive the maximum sentence, um, the individuals that are on trial? And then, as far as sentence reductions go, for the co-conspirators that are testifying, what would that potentially look like in terms of sentence reductions?
Yeah, so let's start off, I guess, with the sentence reductions. You have two individuals um, who saved the government some resources already off the bat, right? They went ahead, they reviewed the evidence with their counsel, and they said, "Hey, you know what? We are in fact guilty of this crime. We're going to plead guilty. Therefore, they will be considered for what is called a 5K 3.1 motion, right, or a 5K motion, right? And because they have done that, they have substantially assisted the government, right? And by doing that, the government cannot promise them anything, but is showing the judge at the time of sentencing, right? They have substantially assisted the government. The government is in agreement with that. And then ultimately, the government can give a recommendation. It can be, you know, 25% off. It can be one third. It can be up to a half. It just depends on what the government feels that they have substantially assisted to what percentage. And then ultimately, the judge will decide. The judge, having weighed the actual testimony in trial, will decide what their sentencing reduction will be.
And as far as these individuals that are taking their case to trial, um, likelihood of potentially receiving the maximum sentence.
Yeah, so we'll start off with a vast majority of these cases that go to trial in the federal circuit, right? The conviction rate is 98%, if not higher, right? If the federal government brings a case, the Department of Justice brings a case against you, that conviction rate is it's almost sealed, right? Those cases are prepped very thoroughly. They are vacuum tight, as I would say. So once they go to trial, the likelihood of these two individuals, which is Mr. Torres and Mr. Ortega, the likelihood of them being convicted is very high. Now, when it comes to sentencing, again, that will be left up to the judge. However, just criminal history will be taken into effect under the sentencing guidelines. But given the heinous nature of this crime, it is more likely than not, and probably higher, that these individuals will face and will be given life in prison, just because of how heinous this crime is. You have 53 deaths, and they were part of a very complex network of an alien smuggling operation. So the likelihood of them being placed in life in prison is pretty high.
Last question from me. What do you think is important for the public to understand about these cases, whether it be this particular case or just cases like this in general? Um, yeah, what do you think is important for the public to know?
Yeah, it's important for the public to know that, of course, especially for us on the border, that, lives are at risk when we have people coming over here illegally, right? Especially these family members and who lost, 53 people, right? So this is it's very serious. Human smuggling in general is a very serious crime. So I do encourage members of the public, if they do see something to this effect, although some people may think, oh, they're going to go see their family. These alien smuggling operations often treat these individuals much worse than a lot of us treat our own dogs, right? So if the members of the public see something, I encourage them to call somebody, call 911, call your local authorities, call HSI, Border Patrol, and get these people help, because you don't know if this could be very rightfully their last stop, just like these individuals thought they were going to go see their loved ones. This AC unit broke, and each one of them died a very horrific death.
I actually lied. I did have one last question. We've seen a lot of a trend toward using young drivers, individuals that I don't want that don't necessarily understand the full gravity of the consequences of doing something like this. A lot of them think like, oh, I'm just giving a ride to somebody
Mhm.
in the state of Texas, and it appears that this is kind of what happened here. Um, but talk to me a little bit about I guess the exposure that they have, no matter their age.
Yeah, absolutely. So, let's take it a step further, Mariah. A lot of these alien smuggling organizations target these young individuals. And why is that? Because these alien smuggling organizations know that one, these young individuals don't know the full impact of the law and what they're really facing. These individuals think, oh, I'm just giving them a ride, but that's not the case. Here, transporting somebody illegally in the United States, that is a federal felony. That's number one. Number two, these alien smuggling organizations know that they may not face that much time. So that's why they are targeting these young individuals who maybe they're just over the age of 18, they don't have a criminal record, and they may face a very low sentence on the guidelines, anywhere from, 6 to 12 months or 12 to 18 months, and they can be right back out serving these alien smuggling organizations, right? So these aliens, they target them very specifically, and they know for a low amount of money, maybe $20 a person, to pay these individuals, which is a large sum of money for these young kids, and they'll do that. So that is why we're seeing a lot of young drivers. They're targeted. They know that they can be taken advantage of, and if they want to continue making this quick money, they'll serve, a very low sentence and be back again with these alien smuggling organizations.
Thank you very much for your time. Is there anything that you'd like to add that I didn't ask? And if you have any way for people to find you, what area you practice in?
So I practice in the South Texas region. I mainly do civil litigation now, so I don't do any federal criminal defense at this time. However, I do have a passion for these cases, and definitely would love to opine more if you'll have me. But let's see. I did notice that the defense did, off the bat, kind of emphasize that his client, or clients were not anywhere near the scene. And again, like, I'll just emphasize, in a criminal conspiracy, you don't need to be the driver. You don't need to have the smoking gun in your hand, right? A criminal conspiracy is, you could either be person number one or person number 99. However, if your conduct moved the criminal conspiracy forward by any which manner or means, you are part of a criminal conspiracy. And you don't need to know all the details of that criminal conspiracy, but as long as your conduct moved again and moved it forward, you can be held criminally liable.
Thank you. Yes, that is definitely um, important to know, especially when you have young people being targeted for these operations, because they too could be liable if.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. I think it's oftentimes people are like, well, I didn't understand, or I didn't know the entirety of it. I didn't know we were moving 53 illegal immigrants or aliens, right? But the fact that you just moved a person from A to B, and whatever happened in F or G or H, right? It doesn't matter. You completed A to B. So that's where the criminal conspiracy comes into play.